Hello, welcome back to another 5-inch channel. I'm Jay from Jay Books Corner. And today we're doing my December wrap up of about 26 days. It's January. Don't talk about it. It's not worth it. It's not worth talking about. I just want to get it wrapped up. I read 30 something books last month. I remember the exact wording. Some of them really good page days, some of them were not. That being said, I do have a handy dandy bullet journal right here in front of me. My biggest reading day was the 30th and or the 1st of the month. That being said, I have a few books that I have on hand. She got really excited about that. My cats are with me, so if you hear bells, meows, anything like that, my husband and a friend that's over currently is playing video games downstairs, so if you hear yelling, that's that. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. None of my books back here are in any order. That's okay. Let's talk 19, 20, and 21 for Attack on Titans, which is the ones I seem to have read at the beginning of last month. So I gave 19 a 4.25. I can't really remember why. This was quite a few days ago, if you don't remember. And then we have 20, which was a 5, which I do know why. This is the Beast stuff, which is so with Levi. 21 is a 4 because it didn't even work out in the graphic novel. I didn't really love it in its initial run in the television, or I didn't love it when they adapted it either. I just don't love answers, apparently. And that's all what this one's about. Just getting your nitty-gritties. We read The Wild Robot. Wild Robot is the first book in a trilogy by this author. The first one follows Raz as she drops down onto an island and she has to learn to live in the wild as she ends up taking care of a little duckling as well. It's all about their journey and it's beautiful. It's not nearly as good as the movie, which I would recommend more. However, if you have any young kids or anything, this is such a great series. It teaches so many things about humanity, about life, about death. There's so many beautiful things that are wrapped up into this and it's done in such a poetic way. The story does take you on a great journey. However, we'll talk about Better Wild Robot in a minute. I gave this one a 3.75. Then I read Fatebreaker by Victoria Aveyard. Fatebreaker is the final book in the series for the Broken Realms trilogy. The first book follows a group of misfits that you would normally not pick to save the world. The people you did pick all died, so now they have to save the world. And this is the conclusion of that story. I fucking loved it. It was beautiful. It was great. I couldn't tell you a single thing about it. It has nothing to do with Victoria Aveyard's writing. It's just the fact that high fantasy does not like to stay present inside my brain for very long. So it was a 5, and I would recommend. Okay. The next one we're going to talk about is Your Shadow Half Remains. This one is an interesting one. This is a short horror. I technically got the, e-arc, I think, of it, if I'm not mistaken, is how I got hold of this. This said The Last of Us meets something or other. I can't remember the other comm title, and I didn't feel either of those. This is about a world that has broken down through some type of pandemic, where if you look eyes with someone else, you turn eerily violent, similar to Bird Box and things along those lines. And we're following a main character who is going through the worst psychosis of her life. She is literally watching her mind deteriorate because she is stuck indoors. She cannot move, she cannot talk to anybody, and she doesn't know what's real or what's not. And so as an audience, we also don't know what's real or not. And it does have a really shocking ending, and I felt like it worked for the most part. I gave it a 4. I felt like the characters were likable enough, and things are those lines. I read Clean Song. Clean Song is the first novella, the prequel novella for Red Queen, and I gave it a 4. This is the Born of the Monarch part of the world. And then we have Steel Scars, which is the opposite side, so we're following both sides of the war. And I gave this one a 3.75. This following militaristic stuff, and it introduces the very end to our main character for Red Queen itself. That being said, let's move on. I then read The Wild Robot Escapes. This is the sequel. Essentially, the first book ends with Roz having to go on a different journey, and then this book begins with this. And this one has more complex characters, has a much bigger stakes on it. The story has a bigger scope, and overall, I just enjoyed it much more immensely than the first book. Not much more to give it such a higher rating. I only gave it a 4 compared to a 3.75. However, it did make me really excited for the third one, which I will be getting to later on in this month, if not in the very beginnings of February. It just really depends on how long it takes me to read the book I'm currently reading. That being said, let's move forward. As I can't really talk about a sequel, it just follows Roz, you know what I mean? So we're going to move forward. We have Lucky. I don't know who wrote this. It was a 2.75 for me personally. This is the reason why I read this is getting adapted into a TV show for Apple TV by Anya Taylor-Joy, and I love Anya Taylor-Joy, so it's like, sure, I'll go ahead and check it out. I'll get on the hype train before the hype train leaves, and I don't really know where, I don't even know if there's going to be one. I personally didn't think that this story really worked. It follows a father and a daughter as con artists, as they are slowly making their way through the world, and we're following her as she's an adult, as she's a kid, covering all bases and stuff. I think it could work as a really good television show, but it does make me a bit nervous. So I give it 2.75 as it didn't really work for me. Then I read Feybound. Feybound is the first book in, I think, a duology. I think the second one does come out this month, or not this month, but this year, which I'm really Cursebound, which I'm really excited about. This one, it's on a killer cliffhanger. I'm excited for the sequel. I gave this one in particular 4. This one got really graphic. It's very much romantic-y. I was unexpected. That was like the biggest takeaway I had from it. The world building, everything is really, really good. We follow 2 sisters. One is like a historian type of situation. One is a part of the war. She's a general. In the beginning book, she is exiled for a call that she had to make. And then on this exile, her sister joins, and then also her top general joins. And we learn the Fae are actually real. They used to believe that Fae are dead. And we're going through this whole entire like mind-blowing experience, and the story doesn't directly end in it. It was pretty good. I would recommend it. Let's move into this bad boy. I finished this off. I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stories left. I gave all the stories that I read a 5. Do I remember which ones I read? No, not directly. I read Welcome to the Shadowhunter Academy. I gave that a 5. I read, I want to say it's the Lost Herondale. I gave it 5. Pale Kings and Princes, I gave it 5. Bitter Tongue, I gave it 5. The Fiery Trial, I also gave it 5. Born to Endless Night, I gave it 5. And Angel Twice Descending, also a 5. Which is the rest of the stories that need to be read for this collection before I can move on to other Shadowhunter-y thing. I love this. It truly, like, I have one, it's definitely book 7 in the Mortal Instruments. I mean this truly. This is book 7. The Mortal Instruments ends the first series in the Shadowhunter world. Mortal Instruments saw City of Bones to City of Heavenly Fire. It is actually Tales from Shadowhunter Academy. There's other little tidbit stuff in there as well, and depending on how you're reading it in timeline, because they do go backwards into like the early like 1900s and stuff, and things like that, trying to tell you tidbits of stories of really important things. So they have them in different places in the timeline. However, when you're reading it for the first time, it's the only, in my opinion, novella collection that does read like an actual novel, where all the stories do have a very central through line. Each book has a character through line, so that one has a character I can't tell you about because it's a spoiler. And Ghost Shadow Market also has a character I can't tell you about because it's a spoiler, but I can tell you that the Bane Chronicles all follows Magnus Bane. However, with Ghost Shadow Market and the Bane Chronicles, their stories are so widely varied and so vast over time that no, I don't think you need to personally read them in order. I think you can jump around. Tales from Shadowhunter Academy is the only one that I feel like it's necessary to read it in order. Yeah, but that took up a lot of my reading, and so I finished those. Then I read How to End a Love Story. This is I guess a hard romance. I don't know what to describe this, like a hard-hitting romance. It follows a girl who her sister, is it her sister? I want to say it was her sister, was killed in a car wreck, and she is now slowly falling in love with the person who hit her, killed her. Oh, her sister committed suicide, that's what it was. He was driving the car that she jumped in front of that killed her. And so it's this very big hot war. She wrote a book. That book is being optioned into a television show. She is helping part of the writer's room. He is the main writer on that show. I thoroughly enjoyed myself. I would recommend. It was a 3.75. I DNF'd. I don't DNF very often, but I did DNF The Raiders of Lost Heart by Joe something or other. Gonna move on from that. I found it to be really hard to read for a lot of different reasons, but also like when your male main character's biggest thing is how much her boobs flop, I get bored. We have Romancing the Beat by Gwen Hayes. This is a perfect writing material if you're trying to write romance. I think this is something I would follow immensely over and over again. I have followed, especially if you're struggling on structure, if you're especially struggling on certain aspects and stuff. This is a perfect viewpoint to go to. Nowadays, I would really recommend K-Tastic and things if you want something more clean. This is a great starting point in understanding the beats of romance, because the romance is a very, very particular genre, and a lot of people do tend to want to write it if they are trying to write something that they've never written before. I recommend Gwen Hayes. I gave it a 5. It's a great little writing resource, which I did use for our story. And then I read Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. This is for the new Supergirl movie. This is the story that it's based on. And I gave it a 3.75. This follows Supergirl. She is planet humping, but all the planets she's hopping to all disability her at some point in time for whatever reason, Red Sun, whatever it might be, and we're following her and these ragtag group of friends. I liked how big the scope was. I'm curious to see how they're going to adapt it to the barest minimum in a movie for DC, and I'm really excited for Millie Alcott to take this role. Then I read Rain Street. I don't know. I'll put the cover up on the screen. This is a little gay, wintry romance, is what this is. Follows novella. Follows two girls. One is the best friend, and her boss thinks that she's a lesbian, and so they invite her for a date, or they invite her out and hope she brings a date. And the other one's her best friend. They recently got broken up with, and now that person's engaged to the person they broke up. You know, the whole thing. They decide to date one another to solve each other's problems over the holidays, and you can see where it goes. I really liked it. I gave it a 4.25. I read Mrs. Trin or something along those lines. Once again, this cover would be on screen. I gave this one a 2.75. I really didn't like this. I didn't really like how characters were depicted, how the woman was depicted. It is from the 80s, so I'm only faulting it so far. However, you can really see how far we come if you read something like this. I've heard the newer stuff in the series is better, but I'll take the word for it. Then I read Historia. The artwork here is fucking stellar. Oh my god. So I gave it a 4. I really liked it. I like learning about all the different histories. And it's before Diana is born, so you get to hear about the creation of the Amazonians. That's what it is. And it's stunning. I would recommend. Then I read Clear. Clear is a series on comic sexology. It follows a weird sort of reality glitching type of situation where we have these characters who can jump between the different realities that are going on currently, and they're all going on in the same world at the same time, yet certain people can see through them. Our main character is just learning that they can see through them, and we're following their journey as they discover that and see what that looks like. I went on a 3.75. This particularly interests me because of Scott Snyder. I tend to like Scott Snyder's work, and this one was pretty good as well. I would say it's much more like an inspirational point just because the concept is really cool. I didn't love the full gravitas of the whole situation. Then I read The Lost Book of the Light by Cassandra Clare. This is book 2 in the Elder Curses. This goes right before you start the publication order. It goes right before you start the Dark Artifice, and I fucking adored this book. It's one of my favorite Shadowhunter books of all time. I gave it a 5. I could not recommend more. I can't understand why someone wouldn't like this. It's just so perfect. I feel like the narrator does a great job. I know that's controversial, but once you get to a certain place, how do you not like this? I don't get it, people, but there is a lot of haters for it. I'm not one of them. I'm a supporter. And then lastly, I read The Gravity of Us, which I have a whole video talking about. That's my final book of the year. The Gravity of Us follows a boy who ends up going off to NASA because dad ends up becoming an astronaut for Mars, and there is a conspiracy theory. He's a journalist, and so it gets a little complicated. That's all I'll say. I really liked it. I would recommend it. I felt like it was cute. It definitely did everything I wanted it to do, and I landed on a good 4. If you want to know more thoughts and opinions in particular on that, I recommend this video. For any Shadowhunter related things, I have a playlist which I can send you over to as well. Everything else, I think there's one single reading vlog which I can send you over to, talking a bit more in length about some of these books. I don't know which ones in particular, but other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll talk to you all next time. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.